They didn't want to kill him. They wanted to bury him in bureaucracy. After his reports on corruption and troop logistics gained traction, the generals knew better than to court public backlash with another suspension. So they got clever. "Captain Traoré," one of them said with a smile, "you've been promoted, head of strategic coordination and civilian military liaison." It sounded impressive. It was a coffin. The office was tucked in the basement of the Ministry of Defense. No windows, broken air vent, a desk with drawers that jammed. The phone didn't dial out. The printer jammed every third page. And every day, a clerk brought him files no one would read, stamped internal review only. It was exile disguised as elevation. A slow death. Most men would have taken the hint. Clocked in, clocked out, waited for the next career-ending reshuffle. But Traoré didn't do most. He read every file, cross-checked every supply request, mapped every village that hadn't received its promised aid. And more importantly, he started to connect the dots. One clerk, two aides, a retired captain working in logistics, a lieutenant in the communications wing. Whispers became meetings. Meetings became maps. Maps became missions. All from that forgotten office. The generals assumed he was fading. They joked about him during lunch. Has the captain solved the mystery of the missing pens yet? Maybe he's teaching his paperclips to march. But while they laughed, Traoré was building something they didn't see coming. A shadow command chain, loyal not to power, but to purpose. One night, a colonel barged into his basement office unannounced, saw him hunched over a map, radio crackling. "What the hell are you doing, Captain?" Traoré looked up, calm. "Coordinating civilian protection protocols, sir. As assigned." The colonel blinked, because in that moment, he realized something chilling. They hadn't buried Traoré. They had unknowingly given him cover, a place to move without scrutiny, to organize, to track, to plan, and now, to act. It started small. A convoy reached a border village 3 days ahead of schedule. A shipment of medicine arrived in a district hospital that had been pending for 6 months. Then a group of kidnapped farmers were found and freed. No headlines, no credit, no official statement. Just results. No one knew who coordinated it. The radio chatter was clean. The orders never came from high command. Yet the field officers followed them anyway, because the instructions were clear, humane, and delivered with precision only one man had consistently shown. Inside the ministry, whispers began. Who authorized the airdrop in Yalgo? Why is Unit 31 listening to someone not on the chain of command? Why are villages painting IT on their water tanks? The initials spread faster than any official campaign. IT. Ibrahim Traoré. Not as a name, as a signal. A sign that someone still cared. That someone was still fighting the right war. The generals were furious, but paralyzed. On paper, nothing had been violated. No speech given, no threat made, no orders disobeyed, only redirected. If they cracked down, they'd have to explain what was being stopped. Food delivery, hostage rescues, security patrols. And that would mean admitting what they'd failed to do. They couldn't punish competence. They could only watch it grow. Traoré kept working from his dusty office. Every report he filed was for internal use. But outside those walls, every action he coordinated stitched trust back into torn corners of the country. He never signed his name, but villagers knew. When the trucks arrived on time, when the wounded were evacuated, when someone showed up asking what they needed instead of telling them what to do, they whispered, Traoré is still alive. One morning, a senior aide entered his office with a new batch of files, paused at the doorway, looked around, saw the wall covered in maps, strings, code markings, and troop status reports, not decorations, blueprints. The aide didn't say a word, just placed the files down gently and added a new envelope, unmarked, no label. Inside, a report detailing a secret weapons cache linked to the very generals who thought Traoré was buried. He opened it, read it twice, then closed the envelope and said, almost to himself, "The real war is upstairs." The report didn't just name corrupt generals. It showed how they moved weapons, not to defend the people, but to arm private militias protecting mining routes, smuggling corridors, and hidden estates. It was more than betrayal. It was treason. Traoré made no public accusations. He didn't march into their offices. He simply compiled, cross-referenced, verified. Each link in the chain, each forged signature, each missing shipment, each bank transfer, was documented with obsessive precision. And then, he sent copies. Not to the press, not to the president, to field commanders, to unit medics, to every soldier who ever wondered why their supplies never arrived, why their friends bled without backup, why civilians blamed them for things they never controlled. And with each package came a single note: know who you fight for. The reaction was silent, but seismic. One colonel quietly canceled a scheduled raid and redirected his forces to protect a school. A captain suspended patrols until her men were resupplied properly. In the north, an entire brigade painted over the ministry's crest on their trucks, replacing it with a symbol, a compass, pointing forward. Within the ministry, the pressure built. Files began to vanish from archives. Staff were rotated without warning. One general flew his family out of the country in the middle of the night. Another suddenly transferred command, citing exhaustion. No official admitted panic, but their walls were cracking. And yet, no one could name their enemy. Because Traoré never stepped out of line. He never rallied crowds. He never spoke to the media. He just made sure the truth existed, in enough hands that no lie could fully erase it. Late one night, a junior intelligence officer entered his office, uninvited. Closed the door, whispered, "They're planning something. A reshuffle, a trap." Traoré didn't flinch. "I know. You're not going to stop it." He smiled, but there was no joy in it, only calculation. "I'm not going to stop them. I'm going to let them finish the hole they're digging, and then show the country where it leads." The next morning, a new memo arrived from the top brass, effective immediately. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was reassigned, promoted to strategic defense consultant, stationed in a remote diplomatic outpost far from the capital. No explanation, no discussion, just exile. Again. But this time he didn't pack his bags. He packed something else, a file, labeled Asset Reallocation and Personal Enrichment, Class A. And beneath it, a single page, handwritten. "Exile is a luxury you grant men with no audience. I already have one." The file was never leaked. It was delivered to the Office of Military Oversight, to the Ethics Division of the National Assembly, to 3 independent foreign embassies, and, most critically, to the one radio station in the country that still broadcasted uncut segments after midnight. At exactly 007, a reporter read from the first page, "Funds meant for soldier pensions rerouted through shell companies linked to Generals Diomande and Malik." "200 bulletproof vests sold on the black market. Foreign aid disguised as operational logistics funneled to offshore accounts. One line at a time, no drama. just fact. Undeniable, signed, dated, fact. By sunrise, the capital was awake and angry. Military wives stormed the gates of the ministry, waving printed pages and chanting, "Where's our food? Where's our pay?" Soldiers removed their helmets, standing shoulder to shoulder in silence. Even officers who once called Traoré the ghost in the basement now spoke his name with reverence. Inside the ministry, the response was chaos. Meetings behind locked doors, burned documents, a rush to control a narrative already gone. But there was no containing it now. Because Traoré hadn't just shown corruption, he'd shown how systematic it was, how calculated, how it cost lives. And then came the message, not from him, from the field commanders. We no longer recognize the authority of generals who robbed the mission. We await new orders from someone who remembers what command is for. 2 days later, the National Assembly held an emergency hearing, and just before it began, Ibrahim Traoré walked through the front door. No parade, no bodyguards, just a man with one folder. He handed it to the clerk, took a seat in the audience, watched as his evidence spoke louder than he ever needed to. The vote was unanimous. The top 5 generals were stripped of rank and tried for high betrayal, frozen assets, public disgrace, and Traoré, he never asked to lead. But when the assembly offered interim executive powers, he said only, "I'll hold the mic until the people are ready to take it back." In his old basement office, now preserved as a historical site, there's a plaque. It reads, "From this room, one man coordinated clarity in a system built on confusion." And above the plaque, a compass, still pointing forward.